Hi there. Welcome to Carnell Knowledge. My name is Tom Carnell. This is a show I do 3 times a week on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, in which I review / recommend 5 movies, a book, and 5 records. 3 times a week. It adds up. I've been doing this for a while. I hope you're a long-time subscriber. If not, what the heck, man? Subscribe. I was a buyer for Tower Records, Record Factory and Warehouse. I wrote and published Carpet Nocta magazine, which was a dark art publication back in the 90s. I wrote for Fangoria and Dread Central for about 15 years. Ran a couple podcasts, and now I'm an author. You can go to my Amazon page and find all sorts of stuff. There's some novels, some short story collections. There's some interviews, interview books. Again, I do this show 3 times a week, and what I'm trying to do is highlight some things that other people aren't talking about. It's a big world out there, as I like to say around here. A lot of things get released and a lot of things fall through the cracks. I'm here to dig through those cracks and try to find them and bring them to you so that you might have more to choose from than all the same stuff that keeps getting pushed on you via the other YouTube channels and book talk and record talk and all that other stuff. Again, it's a big world. I try to show you some things that are interesting, at the very least. Remember to like and subscribe and all that other stuff. If you go in the description of this video, you will find links. Links to the trailer films or sometimes the full movies that I'm going to talk about. There's a link to the Amazon page of the book that I talk about. And then there's also links to full YouTube playlists of all the records. Because don't take my word for it. What I like, you may not like. But if something I say piques your interest, go into the description of this video. You can click on the link, go to the playlist, and judge for yourself. I think that's it. If you have anything you want to talk about, please comment. And if it's something you want to take offline or you want to send something of interest my way, go ahead and email me at tomcarnell@gmail.com. Okay, with all that taken care of, let's get on to this today's stuff. I keep trying to say this week, but it's 3 times a week, so let's say we're going to start in 2009 with a film directed by Stuart Haselden, starring Adar Beck, Luke Mabley, and Gemma Chan. Before I get the movie's called Exam. I did a bunch of the press for this film. So full disclosure, a bunch of the press for this film. Back when I worked for Dread Central. I like Stuart Haselden. I think that he's a really smart guy, and I think this film shows it. The synopsis, as we say, is as follows. 8 candidates for a highly desirable corporate job are locked together in an exam room and given a test with just one seemingly simple question. However, it doesn't take long for confusion to ensue and tensions to unravel. Of course, give something to a bunch of humans and they're going to screw it up. I like this film. I thought it was a pretty neat idea. And it kept gnawing on me, like it reminded me of something. And then it came to me. It's very similar to director Marcelo Pinheiro's 2005 film called El Método, aka The Method, in which 7 top corporate candidates are left in a room and informed on computer screens about their tasks, and that one of them is working for the corporation as an observer. It's very much a Romerian idea, being something George Romero said, and that was that drama is you take a group of people, you introduce them to the audience, and you lock them in a room and just watch the characters bounce off of one another. And both The Method, which I also highly recommend, and Exam are exactly that. Smart, humorous at times, grisly at times, grim, certainly, but well worth checking out. I like this film. I like Stuart, and this film just sort of came and went, and that's too bad because I thought it was a pretty smart outing. So there you go. Our second film from 1991, we talk a lot about Michele Soavi here. He was a protege of Dario Argento. He did things like Della Morte dell'Amore and The Church, which we've also talked about. We've talked about both of those, I want to say, on the show. Anyway, this is called La SETTA, aka The SECT. It stars Kelly Curtis, Herbert Lom, and Mariangela Giordano. It's about a kindergarten teacher who discovers a secret well in the basement of her house and soon finds herself being followed by a murderous satanic cult. An interesting film. I don't think it's Soavi's best film, but it's certainly interesting. Herbert Lom is sort of in it as a sort of a thing that furthers the plot, sort of drives everything forward. It's kind of overly convoluted and it gets unfocused at times. I think it's one of Soavi's lesser films, but that doesn't mean that it's not interesting. The acting, the direction are all fine, but it's the script that gets in the way. There's too much exposition. There's too much checking in with the audience. Like, so this happens. And then like everyone kind of turns, not literally, but they turn to the audience and go like, you with us? If not, we're going to go over that again. But yeah, visually, you can definitely tell it's Soavi. There's some really great shots in it, really lovely shots. But again, the script inserts itself and it's back to jabbering about superfluous plot details and exposition. There's a couple things that I kept getting, my suspension of disbelief kept getting hung up on. There's a doctor in here who looks like he's a kid. Looks, at the very least, he looks super young to be a doctor. But overall, I think the film is worth seeing, especially for Italian horror film completists and fans of Michele Soavi. Others may find themselves bored and or hopelessly confused. Moving on to our next film, 2011. It's directed by these guys, they call themselves the Vicious Brothers. It's called Grave Encounters. Stars Benjamin Wilkinson, Sean Rogerson, and Ashley Grisko. You probably have seen this bouncing around on most of the streaming platforms. There's a couple of sequels to it. My recommendation out of the box is skip the sequels because it's kind of beating the same drum. But this first one is, I think, worth checking out. It's about a ghost hunting show, one of those ghost reality shows where they mount cameras all over the place and they go looking in search of spooks. And they soon discover that they're involved in something that is way over their head. The setting of the film's fictional Collingwood, which I think is funny, Collingwood, Dark Shadows. Anyway, psychiatric hospital in Maryland is actually Riverview up in Coquitlam, British Columbia. I spent a lot of time up at Riverview, not as a patient, but I did the coverage for Case 39 there, a movie with Renée Zellweger and Jodelle Ferland. And I also did a lot of time there on Alien vs. Predator Requiem. And it's legit. It's a spooky old building. It was featured in the Watchmen TV series, and it was also featured on the X-Files. Legit a spooky place. And every time I've ever been there, someone has always come up, kind of sidled up and gone like, hey, this place is haunted, which I think is a crock of shit. But anyway, it's a spooky building, and it definitely sort of fits in with the vibe of this place. A lot of the cast, their characters were based on real ghost hunters, which again, but it reminded me of things. There was like a vibe there that kind of reminded me of things like Session 9, Brad Anderson's film, and a few others. It gets a little heavy-handed, but there are some genuine spooky, scary moments to this flick. Really low budget. The acting is okay. They're kind of annoying, the characters, but I think they're supposed to be, because we want them to meet the spooks and we want them to get murdered in a glorious fashion. And some of the fashions are pretty glorious. It borders on a time loop film, like Triangle or Time Crimes. But overall, I thought it was well done. Given what they had, given the budget they have, given all the limitations, they managed to pull it off. And then it was kind of a success, and they started piling sequels on. And as a good friend of mine, Brian Ellison, says, serialization leads to trivialization, and that applies here. Up next, a documentary from 2015 directed by Callum Waddell called 42nd Street Memories, the Rise and Fall of America's Most Notorious Street. Not to bury the lead, but I like this. I like this film a lot. It's a lot of talking heads, but it talks about the heyday of 42nd Street, back when it was dangerous and it was seedy and it was dirty. And when the film, whatever film you were watching in a grindhouse wasn't interesting, you could always watch the rats or the cockroaches mate. There is a lot of, like I say, talking heads in it. Some are informed, some I don't know who they are, but like they talk to Joe Dante, they talk to Frank Henenlotter, and they even talk to Veronica Hart, which I was surprised to see because she was sort of a big thing in adult cinema and then sort of disappeared for a while. But she was back in the heyday of what I call big bush porn. And she lends a certain air of authenticity to it that makes it, I don't know, ring truer. It also talks about the changes that 42nd Street underwent back when Giuliani came in and decided that he was going to clean everything up. The documentary was released as a side feature on a DVD release of Anthropophagus, Joe D'Amato's film with Tisa Farrow and George Eastman. Again, the talking heads are really informed. Like, it's not like, well, I read once that, I mean, they were there and they can speak with that air of, authenticity and certainty. Not only documents the history of the street, but also the films that played there, and also the mood of what it was like to go there, be on the street, and also to go into the grindhouses and see just glorious. It was the heyday of grindhouse cinema and exploitation cinema. And I think overall, this documentary is every bit as unique as the place that it documented. So yeah, highly recommended there. Let's see. My next slide was usually just one film, but I'm going to do two, and they're together for a reason. What they are is, let's see, let me grab my notes here. In 1968, there was a film released called Salt and Pepper. And then in 1970, there was a film called One More Time. So let's start with Salt and Pepper. Directed by Richard Donner, which blew me away. He directed Superman, and he directed Lethal Weapon. And it stars, it's kind of a buddy picture, starring Sammy Davis Jr. and Peter Lawford. Has to do with the aforementioned main two characters. I guess it's a joke that Sammy Davis Jr.'s name is Salt and Peter Lawford's character is Pepper. But they own kind of a groovy, swinging nightclub in like the downtown of London. It's the place everyone goes, and it's everything's very groovy. It's a surprisingly witty script. But around this time, so they were all part of the Rat Pack. And at some point, President Kennedy was going to visit Vegas, and Frank Sinatra was really hyped to have President Kennedy stay at his place. Lawford was kind of the go-between for some reason, and when Kennedy's people realized, I don't know if it's a good look for the president to be hanging out with Frank Sinatra, because at the time there was all those rumors that Frank Sinatra was kind of mobbed up. And so they changed it, and he stayed someplace else, and Sinatra blamed Peter Lawford At that point, he exiled him from the Rat Pack. But Sam, for some reason, Sammy still did this picture, these two pictures with Lawford. And I'm not really sure how Sinatra took it, but I imagine he wasn't happy. The overall film, again, if I had to use one word to describe it, it's very groovy. Very akin, has a sensibility like Ocean's 11. Things are a little dated, very mid to late 60s. And I swear to you, if I would be shocked to find out that Mike Myers this isn't one of the films he watched before making Austin Powers. It's got that kind of a vibe to it. The comedy is super shticky, kind of cheesy, but it's still dopely fun. And it's one of those films where whatever's happening in the script, suddenly someone will come into the scene and say, "Boss, we need you out there. We need you, blah, blah, blah. You're on." And it cuts to a 3-minute, 4-minute Sammy Davis number of him and a bunch of dancing girls singing some very cool stuff. If you're a Sammy fan, you're going to love this stuff. The comedy, you can kind of sense the impact around that time of Monty Python. It's very silly and very sort of non sequitur-ish. Again, it kind of dated. There's a lot of race stuff that happens in a funny kind of way. Someone described the film as a carry-on film in all but name and cast. The carry-on films were really huge in England around this time, and they would take on different genres and subgenres in an amusing fashion. Both of these films posters by Mad Magazine's Jack Davis, and they are very, very cool. Google them, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Jack Davis had a certain style, and it's very evident here. There was a novelization of both films, which seems weird given what the films are about. And I was talking with David Scow online, and he had said that Richard Donner credited Sammy Davis Jr. and Peter Lawford with sort of midwifing his career after meeting them on an episode of Wild Wild West, interestingly called Night of the Returning Dead. And they specifically requested Donner for this film. And I thought that was kind of cool. But overall, Salt and Pepper, it's a silly affair. The whole film's kind of inconsequential, but it's still a kick in the pants. Very enjoyable, very fun. And it's something I would probably revisit at some point. Let's see, which leads us to its sequel in 1970, One More Time. Now, here's where it gets all interesting. Same cast, same vibe. Two nightclub owners find themselves in trouble. There's an additional ad of that Peter Lawford has a twin brother, and he dies, and Peter Lawford sort of steps in and takes his role. Here's the interesting part. It's the only film directed by Jerry Lewis that Jerry Lewis didn't star in. And you can feel throughout this film the heavy hand of Jerry Lewis on it. A lot of the comedy is straight out of the Lewis school. By the end of the film, Sammy Davis Jr. is doing pretty much a Jerry Lewis impression, down to like, "Hey lady," that kind of thing. And boy, some of that comedy lands like a brick. Not entirely funny, but definitely Jerry Lewis, which, interesting thing, back when I reviewed the Hammer documentary, this was like maybe a week or so ago, they mentioned this film. And in the middle of it, out of nowhere, Christopher Lee shows up as sort of a Dracula character, and Peter Cushing shows up for no good reason as a Dr. Frankenstein. I guess Sammy Davis was a big horror fan, and he lobbied hard and ultimately got Lee and Cushing to do their cameos. They're in it for a hot second. I mean, literally, it's by the time you go, "Hey, is that Christopher Lee?" He's gone. But it's fun. It's amusing. one of the few amusing things in this picture. Again, Jack Davis did the cover or the lobby art. There was a novelization. This one, unlike Salt and Pepper, this script is overly convoluted, like needlessly so, and it all ends up feeling a little contrived. Like, hey, that worked. Let's do it again one more time. Davis even shoehorns in, at the time, laughing was really big. And for no reason at all, Sammy Davis starts doing his Here Come the Judge shtick, which just, yeah. It's all pretty embarrassing, and its ineptitude rests, I think, solely at the feet of Jerry Lewis. Jerry Lewis came in, and he was a legend at that point, and everyone was like, well, Jerry thinks it's funny, so let's do it. But again, this is one that I do recommend Salt and Pepper. I don't recommend One More Time. It all is pretty annoying. By the time I got to about the 60, 70-minute part, I was checking my watch, like, are we done with this yet? But again, Salt and Pepper, hilarious. One More Time, not so much. Moving on to books. I have a book here on my Kindle. I've talked about Nicholas P. Robinson before, but this is a short story collection called Caution May Cause Unexplained Ocular Bleeding, which I think is an hilarious title. It's a short story collection and collects 10 stories ranging from the brutal and bleak to the bizarre and surreal. Things like a drunk driver experiencing consequences worse than anything he could have imagined. A beloved pet is accidentally sacrificed, opening the gates of hell. That kind of thing. It's a terrific collection. Again, as with all collections, including my own, the good, the bad, and the ugly apply. Some stories are much better than others. Some are interesting experiments. And again, I don't keep myself out of that. You know, you try something and it works, and sometimes it does work in spades, and sometimes not so much. But it's interesting always because of the imaginations of making it happen. I enjoy Robinson's work a lot. I enjoyed this collection a lot, and I think you will too. So there you go. Moving on to our 5 records. First record just came out recently in 2026. It's called One Dream, One Star, and it's by the Japanese band Sugar Plant. They are a band that blends shoegaze, dream pop, and indie rock. This stuff is lovely, very kind of low-key, not trance in the classical trance, but more like put you in a trance, very mellow. It's perfect for late night listening, slow, steady rhythms. Reminded me of bands like Galaxy 500, Low, Bedhead, Love Spirals Downwards, Fishman, Mazzy Star, Stereolab, Pram, Air, Hooverphonic. You with me? Excuse me. I love this record. I thought it was great. I'm a big Sugar Plant fan, and they're one of those bands, if a record came out just today, I would immediately grab it and throw it into my inbox. Good stuff all the way around. Again, go to the description of this video. You can click on the link and hear it for yourself. Up next, record from 2025. The band is called Ibarra, Z-E, and then I-B-A-R-R-A. The album is called AFIM, A-F-I-M. It's a band from South America who blends 70s and 80s cinematic pop, jazz, and indie funk. Very sophisticated, evokes a nostalgic saudade feel. Modern sounding and super cool. It reminded me of in the older realm of like Flora Purim and Ierdo Moriarty and Gaetano Velosa, but also Marcus Vail and Gilberto Gil. Very enjoyable. It's pop, but it's South American pop, and it's got just enough progressiveness to it that it made it interesting, and hence its inclusion. This is one of those things you can put on at dinner and very much enjoy it. Our third record, another brand new record from 2026 by Jack Gardiner. The album is called KINTSUGI. He's from Liverpool. I guess he was in the band China Crisis, which, given his content, it kind of blew me away. Very sophisticated fusion. This guy's a burner. Up there with all of the greats of the day. Fuses high-level prog metal and occasional blues, R&B, and neo-soul. This guy is an up-and-coming guitar hero. The record reminded me, and his playing reminded me, of a host of people. Matteo Mancuso came to mind. Mark Leterrier came in mind. Less frenetic and less weird Buckethead. And then, of course, Joe Satriani, Steve Vai, and a female guitar player, Lori Bastillo. Anyway, great stuff. He's prone to, on his videos, wearing very, very bright colors, and he's a burner. He just did a Rick Beato's podcast, and he's a burner, man. A lot of two-handed stuff, a lot of very quick, fluid runs within the context of something that's fairly accessible. I like this a lot, and I've shared it with a couple of friends. So, fourth record. I said in the past show that I have been going through a phase of gospel music. I did a Ron Carter, Ricky Dillard record a couple of shows ago. In the course of all of that, I found a record called Like a Ship Without a Sail. It's by Pastor T.L. Barrett and the Youth for Christ Choir. Barrett was an American Pentecostal minister from Chicago's South Side. Again, this is straight up gospel music with heavy soul influences. That Youth for Christ choir is a huge choir. It sounds even bigger than it is. Very funky and soulful. Far better than you think it would be. I mean, with however you feel about the message that they're getting across, the music itself is it'll immediately grab you. If you have any inkling of liking gospel music, yeah. And you're going to, undoubtedly, I go through phases, and you're going to undoubtedly hear more about some more gospel music at some point, just because you should listen to everything. And even if you don't really dig what's happening, you should give it a shot. And for some reason, I don't know why. I'm not a religious person by any stretch, but I find myself, maybe it was my time in funeral service, that might do it. But anyway, I found myself drawn to gospel music, and I think this is a fine example. Reminded me of Kirk Franklin, the great Kirk Franklin, Supreme Jubilee, the music of Gil Scott-Heron, Shuggie Otis, the fantastic unsung Baby Huey, and then the aforementioned Ron Carter and Rick Dillard. Highly recommended. Go to the description. You can find a link and give it a try yourself. That title track, Like a Ship Without a Sail, just kicks. It really kicks. And then finally, I'm kind of cheating on this one. This is actually 3 records. The band is called Onra, O-N-R-A. The albums are called CHINOSERIES Part 1, 2, and 3. Onra is a French music producer, Arnaud René Bernard. The music style is described as chopped up. It's a chopped up set of R&B laden beats and electronically produced experiments laced with influences spanning the globe. What it is he went to China and Vietnam and deep Asia and bought a bunch of records and brought them all back and sampled a ton of it. Not only the beats, but also some of the instrumentation, and definitely some of the vocals. All 3 records are bangers. I really enjoyed all 3 of these things, and it made me want to dive in even deeper. And who knows, maybe you'll see some Chinese music in the upcoming episodes. This reminded me of things like Flat Pocket, RJD2, Blockhead, and Solons. This is one of those ones where you're going to just trust me on this. Go to the description, click on the links. I provide links to all 3 records, and give them a try. They're different. They're a little challenging, but I have faith in you. And that's going to do it for a Wednesday. Not too bad. I will be back in a couple of days on Friday, and with a whole bunch more stuff, including, I want to say this. I just finished this, and this is, you're going to want to hear about that. Okay, so that's it for Wednesday. I'll be back in a few days, and that's it. Have a good week.